Yes, please.
I don't know if this fits in. I'm going to ask.
Please.
Because part of my belief system is that thoughts are things.
Yes.
That they create. They're as real as what happens.
Yes.
And does that fit into this?
Yes, it does. Absolutely. Yes. So thoughts are a form of energy, just as you said earlier. It does fit. They're not exactly the same kind, right? So you cannot. Different instruments have different detection ranges. Thoughts cannot be, grabbed by your by the hand, right? Because you're using wrong instrument. But they are different type of energy, and I'm going to actually show you something that will prove it right in a moment. Check out this picture, and check out what kind of reactions you have in your body. And then check out this picture and check out what kind of reactions you have in your body. Now, they are, let me move that away. The effect of the thoughts on physical systems is almost immediate, So they are not just like, electricity. It's not something that you can grab in your hand, but it's making very visible physical, realities. So the fact that they are not on the same range, let's say of some spectrum of materialismness, right? That does not make any one of them less real than the other. Actually, I would propose that it's the thoughts that come first. Nothing happens in reality before it was thought. Right? You first have to decide to get up. Even if your neurons do that, right? And then you do that, you have to decide to be a member of your union, and then you do that. You have to decide to eat, and then you eat. You have to, decide. Thoughts come first. So, if in hierarchy of order, I think I would put them higher. Yes, it does fit absolutely. It's just different level of energy. Yes.
You use the word energy a lot, but I didn't quite understand when you said to change your energy. How do you change your energy?
Yes, you have. This again goes to. Okay, so here are. Physical energy is obviously one example, right? You feel completely different if you after the exercise than before. You feel completely different if you sleep well than before. You feel completely different if you meditate than if you don't. That's one basic level. Another level of changing your energy is emotional. Think depressive thoughts and see how your energy level behaves. Think something optimistic, something that you value, somebody you care about, and see how your energy level changes. Now, when I'm saying your energy state, you are the one to judge your energy state. This is absolutely valid. It's not some construction. The way you feel is not some construction that's out there and should be dismissed as non-tangible or non-physical, or I don't know which way. The way you feel is all there is for you. So change your thoughts and you'll change your energy state actually in a moment. The meetup that we have next is on Saturday at 3 o'clock, and I'm going to show you, Tony Robbins? Tony Robbins, this master coach. In any case, he posted somebody out in the audience who claims to have a clinical depression. And he's changing their energy state from euphoria to deep depression within 10 seconds, and then back, and then down in 10 seconds, and then back. Just by having them focus on different things, having them behave with different things, because this mind-body connection. He asks, how do you behave when you're connected? And then you see this lady started pounding. The head goes down, the shoulders come in. She starts tapping with her leg. She starts using that microphone and pounding down. One triggers the other. Thoughts create this physical response, and then this physical response creates further those thoughts, and there's a positive feedback loop. And before you know it, she's down in a pit. And then he cracks a joke. He says, "Are you about to fart?" And she's like, "What are you?" She totally snaps out in 1 second, and she starts laughing. The whole audience starts laughing. This is energy state. It's affected by our physical, our emotional, our mental, means intelligence, and our spiritual levels. So that's what I mean by it. Spiritual meaning anything that we consider is greater than ourselves in this universe. And if we think that we are the greatest thing in this universe, I think it's a problem. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah, one of the jobs that I had while I was working my way through college was to perform mineralogical research on samples submitted to one of the geology professors. And I could relate to, the way that I tackled analysis of the samples, by first of all being, and then seeing, doing, expanding, kind of going through the process
Yes.
to determine exactly what was in each sample.
Yes.
So I could relate to that.
Yes. And one thing I forgot to mention, when you're done with expanding, you come to the level of new being. And then it's like a spiral up. It's a spiral system. So because after you go through this process, you become new. You expand, and then you reconsider what is it that you are being, and then you go through another loop again. Kind of, which is what you were doing also, right? After you're done with one sample, you now know more, and then you go for another one based on new information that you gathered, right? Exact same thing. Yeah. Beautiful. Yes, please.
Would you distinguish sort of thoughts from intention? It seems like sometimes we intend to get a bite to eat or make certain actions, but it's not really in the form of a verbal thought. It's something pre-lingured almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thought about it.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would love to know your opinion on it. But I would say, so the question is the difference between the thoughts and the intention. There is a lot of these thoughts, and they say about 95% that are happening automatically, meaning we do not consciously decide we are going to think about that. And almost all of this is redundant and repetitive, and which is a problem if they're bad. Even bigger problem if they're bad, if they're not supportive of us, if they're, self-down-putting or hateful towards somebody, or, somebody who thinks about how to revenge, whatever. So about 95% it's just happening. Now I would consider intention to be that small fraction of those remaining 5%, when we consciously decide not only to think about something, but also to consciously decide about something we would like to happen in future, for us to happen in future. So thoughts, let's say 100%, conscious thoughts 5%, intention, I don't know, 1%, 2%, hopefully. Yeah, but it's a good question. I don't have a clear answer to that. It's not, I'm not going to claim expertise.
I think this is a problem that in philosophy and maybe even in language you have, which comes first, the words or the thought, so how much of it is language dependent. So is intention somehow connected to language? And again, I think the jury's out there just in terms of the scholarly work on this, because it's very difficult to kind of get to that level unless, again, through maybe expanding our knowledge base to the understanding of physics to kind of tell us maybe what it is that generates, that provides the initial push.
Right. And we do not know a whole lot about it yet, but here's the thing. We do know way more from experience, which is what coaching is capitalizing on. Coaches capitalize on experience much more than scientists do, unfortunately. And if something works, it works. There's actually even one one example that comes to mind, not necessarily about intention, well, it's tied to that as well, but how different agencies capitalize on experience without necessarily relying on understanding it. We all have this experience of suddenly turning around and then realizing that somebody over there is staring at us. We also have experience of staring at somebody when somebody suddenly turns around and turns toward us. Now, in terms of these frequencies of all kinds that we're emitting, it makes perfect sense, right? But the science is not quite there yet in understanding what's the principle. But here's the thing. The Secret Services will train you that if you want to surprise somebody, you are not to stare at them. Right? They train you. They know how it's working. So freak it if we don't understand. Don't look at them. Don't stare at them. Divert your thoughts until you're in a situation to do whatever nasty thing you want to do. But they take so that was one of my claims. If it's our human experience, let's claim it without waiting for science. Science has thousands of years to figure this out. We don't. Yes.
It is interesting though. I guess just by virtue of our cultural context and upbringing. I mean, learning about the science, it seems to give a kind of permission to trust your experience in a way that.
Yes, I love that. I love that thought. I think I had it on one of my slides that I skipped. Science was at one point this gatekeeper of what we should think and what not. But it's kind of amazing that after we bought into that, it's now the science that's coming around and giving us the insights into things that were earlier taboos in terms of, what's rational or not. Because we're discovering so much of what was earlier not rational being completely plain physics, completely plain biology. And so it's kind of interesting that science is coming around, first being possibly the tool to give us permission, but we are still lagging a little bit. And there's, of course, always we can interpret things in different ways, we as humans. But this whole process is something to take a message from. Let's give ourselves the permission to take what was clearly happening. And so, going back to that example about prayer with people in hospital, if research shows that people who have somebody that cares about them, whether that be through community or prayer or whatever else, if that helps, well, let's not argue. Let's not argue. Let them. The point is not to prove how smart any one of us is. The point is to help the person. So let's do our best to do toward that end. Yeah. Yes, Steve.
Oh, I just wanted to. You mentioned Eben Alexander.
Yes.
As a neurosurgeon, you said that he had a near-death experience. I want to correct that.
Uh-huh.
He had a full death experience. He was brain dead,
Right.
heart stopped, everything, for a prolonged period of time.
Okay.
And the work that came out of that is based on his experiences
During that time.
during that state.
Mm-hmm.
And, if we think in terms of, near death, then you're still thinking, there's a spark of life in there.
Right. Thank you for that.
Biologically producing these hallucinations or visions or whatever he was experiencing. But, and being a neurosurgeon, he was able to review his records and verify that he was indeed clinically dead,
Yeah.
Biologically dead,
Right.
for a prolonged period of time. And then his work that follows up on that, which I highly recommend,
Yes.
is fascinating.
Thank you for that clarification. Actually, even if you look at it medically from the standpoint of not even being dead, but simply in that condition, he should not have recovered.
Right.
By any, medical, they said, he has the slightest chance to live, and if he does, he will be vegetable for the rest of his life. That was the promise of the medical science. Well, he's now fully functioning, brilliant guy, writing books and going around the world. So even if you eliminate that death experience, even if they call it near death, right? That's the kind of term, right, that they use. There's still a whole lot of unexplainable stuff going on there that we don't have explanation for. Now, this reminded me, my wife is a nurse, and when she was in nursing school, they were teaching them to be careful not to say anything inappropriate during surgeries when somebody is knocked out, even dead, even way past the brain and heart functioning, because there have been situations when people will come back after all of this was disconnected, and they knew they heard derogatory comments that some of the staff made because they were hanging above them. And the thing is, the claims that they made were true. So the rest of the staff could not but witness it was correct, and these people were claiming big compensations for that. So this is one of the examples when people take things from the experience without necessarily having explanation for it. It's how it works. Let's take it. Don't get sued, right? It's very practical. Yes.
I don't know if did you ever see that movie? I think it was a Steven Sonberg movie, The Minority Report.
Oh, yes.
I don't think I did.
Okay, you might like to see it, and it has Tom Cruise as the lead actor, and it's based on the premise that you could stop a crime before it was going to happen, because there were these psychics that they could decide that a man was so angry at his wife, right? And he had such good reason, and she had betrayed him and all of this, and he was moving in a certain direction toward his wife and so on, and Tom Cruise's job was, instructed by all of this input, was to stop the crime before it was going to happen.
Cool.
But then, that you could have all the factors would be so clearly aligned that it would be certain that this event was going to happen. And then, knowing this, you would try to stop it. Right? But then the point of the film is that among these psychics, there was a minority report in which one of the psychics, somebody said that at the last moment the person who was going to commit this murder or crime would abort, right? That he would avert his hand, or whatever expression. Right. It was not entirely predictable, and it was uncertain. And I always thought, in my simple way, that was sort of some way of an illustration of the fact that there was, like we were saying, a smidgen of free will.
Yes.
There, like you were talking about when you were talking about the Heisenberg.
Yeah, I owe you that. Let me go back to that. Yes, exactly. That's what it is. And I'll give you one more example from quantum mechanics for the same thing. So this equation shows the relationship between uncertainty in position and uncertainty in momentum. Now, you can translate this into uncertainty in velocity. Momentum is velocity. Momentum is mass times velocity. So, this equation says that you can never know with absolute precision where something is and how fast it moves. And that makes very, very logical sense if you think about that. Imagine take a car, and a car is driving down the street, and you take a snap photo of it. If you take a snap photo of it, you know precisely where it was at that time. But you're clueless how fast it was. Meaning, more you know one of these two quantities, less you know the other one. And this uncertainty in one times uncertainty in the other has to exceed this small number called reduced Planck constant. But the point is, the uncertainty cannot be zero. And more you know one, less you know the other one. For example, if you want to know on the other side how fast the car is, you will have to give yourself more time. More time you give yourself to find out how fast it is, more precise will be your knowledge of its velocity, and less precise you will know where it is. So you're then losing the uncertainty of the position. So it makes perfect sense. You cannot know both, but to know this certain small amount. And so this certain small amount is what then, I love the interpretation of Michio Kaku. I actually do have even the slide when he explains that. Do you want to wait just for a moment? I'll show you. And I'll give you then another example from quantum mechanics that speaks to the same issue.
Newtonian determinism says that the universe is a clock, a gigantic clock that's wound up at the beginning of time, and it's been ticking ever since according to Newton's laws of motion. So, what you're going to eat 10 years from now, on January 1st, has already been fixed. It's already known using Newton's laws of motion. Einstein believed in that. Einstein was a determinist. Does that mean that a murderer, this horrible mass murderer, isn't really guilty of his works? Because it was already preordained billions of years ago. Einstein said, well, yeah, in some sense that's true. Even mass murderers were predetermined. But he said, they should still be placed in jail. Heisenberg then comes along and proposes the Heisenberg uncertainty principle and says, nonsense. There's uncertainty. You don't know where the electron is. It could be here, here, or many places simultaneously. This, of course, Einstein hated because he said God doesn't play dice with the universe. Well, hey, get used to it. Einstein was wrong. God does play dice. Every time you look at an electron, it moves. There's uncertainty with regards to the position of the electron. So what does that mean for free will? It means in some sense we do have some kind of free will. No one can determine your future events given your past history. There's always the wild card. There's always the possibility of uncertainty in whatever we do. So when I look at myself in a mirror, I say to myself, what I'm looking at is not really me. It looks like me, but it's not really me at all. It's not me today, now. It's me a billionth of a second ago, because it takes a billionth of a second for light to go from me to the mirror and back.
I think that beautifully addressed your question. And I'll tell you one other example, which actually goes to that notion of quantum uncertain. Okay, so this slide. I'm going to make this larger. All right, here we go. So this is the physical system of a quantum particle, so subatomic level particle in a potential well. This can be, so the particle is trapped by some force in a well, potential energy well. If this is so-called infinite well, it's not going to be able to escape. And when you look into what are the probabilities of finding this particle any place in this well, so this well is some certain length L wide. If the particle is in the first interesting thing about quantum mechanics is that this particle cannot be at any energy level. This is the difference between quantum and classical physics. In classical physics, you can have any energy level that you want. In quantum mechanics, it's like stairs. So you can be on this stair, or that stair, or that stair. You can transition between the stairs, but you cannot sit in between. So this quantization of energy, this is where word quanta and quantization is coming from. This discreteness of energy levels is associated with different probabilities of where this particle can be. In this ground state, this is so-called wave function that describes, going a little bit technical, the square of this curve is giving you the probability of finding the particle anywhere. So here, for this first curve, the greatest probability is to find it in the center of the well, if it's in this energy state. Now, whether this energy state is depression or acceleration, that's another question. But this particular energy state is associated with particle having the greatest probability of being found in the center, least probability on edges. But then when you get to the next state, this next state, when you square this, you will get probability that will look like this. And now the probability of finding this particle at the center is 0. Now, look at the rest of the probabilities. Most likely to be found quarter each from each side. And then the probability is dropping on each of these levels. But even here, next to the edge, there is non-zero probability, meaning the event is very unlikely, but it's not forbidden. It's very unlikely, but it's not forbidden. And especially when you take into account that you can change the state, and then especially when you take into account that you are typically not in an infinite well, but in a well with finite potential, then the choices become really open. And then when the energy of the particle exceeds the level of the potential that's trapping it, it becomes, check the word, free. It becomes free. Then it can be found anywhere. It can be found anywhere. So if you want to be, being free means it can be found anywhere, but the ability of anybody to determine where you're going to be found, or your ability to materialize at a certain place, drops to close to 0. So if you want to be free, there's a payoff, and there's a downside and there's upside. It's beautiful, beautiful metaphors. Yes, I saw 3 hands. Yeah, please go ahead.
I was just going to say that again. You can say that again.
You gotta go to another visits.
Okay, it's unsimple, and I think more simply.
Okay.
But just, you have to be, really it gets down to how you think about it.
Yes.
And this, I think it's in this morning's paper, this is really simple. In the Pickles cartoon, the older man says, tells his little grandson, today I am older than I have ever been. Next cell it says, today, right now, I am younger than I will ever be. And both are true.
Yes.
And it seems so profound.
It is. I love that analogy, with this analogy. Ramesh, can you say your question and I'll try to combine them?
I don't know if my question is towards that tangent. I want to go back to what you said about Sai Baba and what he said about...
Okay, let me then try to address this question and then we'll come back to that. So, this is the analogy. I'm drawing an analogy between a subatomic particle trapped in a certain energy well, what they call it, right? This can be created by other particles that are, for example, repelling it electrostatically or attracting gravitationally or whatever else, right? So it's kind of bound a certain area. When you look how this particle behaves, you have, actually this can be even just electron bound by atom, right? The electron around the hydrogen atom can be only found at certain places which depend on the energy level of that electron, right? It can change the levels, and the electron cloud that we came to describe is basically the density of the probability of this electron being found anywhere around. So this density probability cloud is different if the electron changes its energy state. That's the bottom physics of it. Change the energy state and then the entire probability of where the electron will be found changes. So for the particle trapped in a box of any kind, if it changes the energy level, now more important for us is the analogy. If we change our energy state, our energy level, if we think compassionate, loving, peaceful thoughts as opposed to depressing, fearful, and whatever else, if we are exercising, if you're eating well, changing this state of ours will change the possibilities of different outcomes for us. Doesn't mean that this will happen or that will happen. But the probability that any one of these outcomes will happen changes for us. This is the analogy that I'm drawing here. This is what is important for us. And so, going back to the electron, there is one set of these states that you have for infinite well. In the bottom, in the ground state, this is how the probability looks like. Higher peak means you have a larger probability of finding the particle at that place. So it's highest right here in the middle. Meaning, if you try to find this electron in this state 100 times, most of the time it will be right there around the middle. But you will also find it occasionally to the side. One side and the other side. That doesn't mean that it will always be in the middle. It's just that you have greatest probability of finding it in the middle. Right? So if we are thinking loving thoughts, helping friends, we have greatest probability of being supported, whatever comes with that. Make sense? Doesn't mean that it will happen, but we have greatest probability. So if you change the state, the well, in this analogy, are our circumstances. They may not be changeable, right? These are just circumstances. We are here in the United States, in Columbus, we have so many years of age, we have family, this and that. Those are circumstances. But the outcomes completely depend not only on circumstances, but also on our state. I'll say our outcomes completely depend on our state way more than on circumstances. I'll take that back, because if it's length L wide, that means that you will be somewhere in that length. Okay, so circumstances give you a range. But within that range, you have a huge amount of leverage. How exactly will things turn out? And then I was saying, if the well is not infinite, meaning if our boundaries are not absolutely rigid, meaning, I was born in Croatia, right? But this well did not bound me to Croatia. This means it wasn't infinite well. It wasn't just that length L that I was bound to, right? My hometown. Finished up over here, right? So if the well is not infinite, that gives you even more leverage on where you can finish up. And if your energy is increasing up more, you can finish up having energy greater than the energy of the well that's binding you. And that sets you free. Now you can be found anywhere. You're not limited anymore to that length L. And the upside of that, beautifully as you said, upside is if you want to explore, right? If you want to find yourself somewhere else, this is the way to go. On the other side, if I wanted to spend my life with my family in my hometown and be there, and for the rest of my life, then that's not the best thing for me to do. Depends what I want. Make sense? But it's this interplay of these energy states of ours, our intentions, and our circumstances that then determine the outcome. Beautiful analogy. It's really wrapped up there. Here's one more that I think that I did not even mention earlier in this analogy. See how these edges here abruptly end at zero when you have infinite well. They don't here. This means that this particle can be found in areas that are so-called classically forbidden, meaning if this was classical physics and that was the wall, and you have a ball and you throw the ball into the ball does not get past the boundary of the wall. Does not. That's classical physics. Quantum mechanically, it can be in the wall. And this is due to the uncertainty of Heisenberg. It can be in the wall. And more so, one more thing, if behind this wall is another drop, it can tunnel. You've probably heard of quantum tunneling. It can find itself on the other side without even getting past the energy barrier that's keeping it in. It can find itself outside. That's what quantum mechanics allows, but not classical physics. This gives us a whole new range of thoughts. Did I answer your question? All right. Ramesh, can you please go ahead?
I think I will reserve my question for Saturday.
Okay. Guys, you've been terrific. You've been terrific.